Welcome to the Frequency Labyrinth. I am Adrienne McDonald, your host. This podcast is for you if you're done with surface level self-help and ready for something deeper and actually transformative. Around here, we work with ancient wisdom, human design, gene keys, and shamanic practices, not as knowledge to collect, but as tools to live by. This isn't about one size fits all. It's about learning to work with your energy, your design, and your life. This is about integration and embodiment. We go deep here with ancient wisdom, practical integration, so that you can develop ironclad self-trust. Let's get into it. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back to the Frequency Labyrinth. Today we're going to be discussing the full moon in Sagittarius that's coming up on Sunday. I've seen some interesting posts about this already. It's lots of, this is going to be party on the rooftop type of vibes. It's going to be adventure, and I don't know. That's not what I'm feeling like at all. This one doesn't really feel like any of that to me, really, even though it's in Sagittarius, even though I've already seen people describing this as a wild, celebratory freedom lunation full of adventure and, chaotic optimism. The energy, the atmosphere underneath this full moon, to me, feels a little bit more reflective. There's movement here, absolutely, but it gives me the finally understanding something vibes, the making peace with something vibes. This full moon peaks on Sunday, May 31st, in my software at 4:44 a.m. Eastern Time at 9 degrees Sagittarius. And what strikes me immediately is about how much of the cosmic mix leading up to this feels like emotional excavation before the revelation. Because we're walking into this after a Mars-Pluto square that likely stirred up some buried frustrations and some power dynamics and resentment and compulsion, or maybe some uncomfortable awareness of where something in life has become unsustainable, or you're just not feeling it anymore. And Mars and Pluto together rarely whisper, like they really pull back the curtains on things. They bring the pressure to whatever's been simmering underneath the surface, especially when we've been trying to maintain control over situations that have already been in the mix for transformation. And then later on top of that, we've had a Venus square Saturn situation, which carries a different type of emotional texture, but can feel equally sobering. Venus-Saturn aspects tend to remove fantasy, like peeling back a fantasy cover. They tend to ask us to look directly at the structures of our relationships, our values, our finances, our commitments, emotional patterns, and self-worth with a much more critical eye than we may prefer. And sometimes that transit may even come off as loneliness or disappointment, or sometimes it just simply reveals where reality and desire just aren't in alignment anymore. So by the time that we reach this full moon on Sunday, I suspect that there's going to be many people that are standing sort of in the aftermath of some sort of realization. And it doesn't have to be catastrophic, maybe not even externally dramatic or anything like that, but something has likely shifted internally. Some sort of truth has landed. A pattern has become harder to deny. A belief system has started to crack open. And I think this full moon may offer relief precisely because of that clarity. Sagittarius at its best is not endless escapism or blind positivity. It's meaning, it's perspective. It's the wisdom that emerges when experience shapes your understanding of life. Sagittarius energy wants expansion, but wants mature expansion. Usually after, pulling back the disillusionment, not, getting drowned into that. And honestly, you don't gain wisdom by avoiding hard truths. You gain it by allowing reality to show itself and refine your worldview. Now, this full moon is occurring with the sun in Human Design Gate 16, which is the gate of skills, while the moon is moving through gate 9, which is the gate of, I think they call it energy for details. So in the Gene Keys framework, 16 moves from indifference to versatility to mastery, while gate 9 moves from inertia to determination to invincibility. And I feel like together these gates create this really interesting energetic architecture, because neither one of them is really interested in scattered effort. They're both very deeply concerned with refinement and concentration. And what happens when this energy is directed with intentionality rather than scattered to the wind, it can really move you into a more intentional living space rather than, I'm just gonna have all these competing priorities. So gate 16 understands that mastery is, quite frankly, not glamorous. It's mastery comes from repetition and study. It's devotion. It's the continuing to return to something long enough for true embodiment to occur. There's a reason why this gate is associated with skills rather than just mere talent. Talent implies something innate and fixed. Skill implies you have to participate. You've got to work at it a little bit. It implies relationship. It implies willingness to practice until something becomes integrated into the nervous system and into your energetic field rather than just simply intellectually understood. And then gate 9 brings this almost microscopic quality to this full moon. It sort of narrows that field. It concentrates focus. It understands that the smallest details are often determine whether something succeeds or collapses over time. And there's a tremendous power in gate 9, but it's not necessarily the flashy kind of power. It's sustained energy. It's directed energy. It's the kind of focus that can slowly move mountains because it stops leaking life force into distractions or emotional noise or, scattered priorities. And when we take these together, this full moon it doesn't feel like chaotic expansion to me. It feels like a real concentrated movement, like the movement where something inside finally decides, okay, I've made the space for this, or I'm making space for this. There's a settled quality to it, a recognition that your life force is, too valuable to be scattering to the wind, or relationships that aren't in good form, or obligations or expectations or belief systems that no longer resonate at the level that they once did. And I think that may be part of why this full moon feels emotionally significant, despite not necessarily being, dramatic and explosive. I feel like most people, or many people, are exhausted from trying to hold bullshit together, trying to placate people, trying to serve a lot of different competing priorities, because that does take a lot of energy and it's exhausting. I feel like this is an opportunity to look at staying loyal to what's true for you personally rather than the collective. And this full moon feels like a threshold where some of that internal negotiation starts to quiet down a bit. And because there is this making peace with it, there's this level of acceptance that starts to enter the picture. There's a kind of acceptance that's like, I understand this now. I can stop forcing this now. I no longer need to convince myself that this still fits. I see what this season was trying to teach me. Those types of things. This is the vibe I'm getting. And once that resistance begins dissolving, there's where you get the space, right? And adding another layer to all of this is that blue moon, that second full moon within the same calendar month. Blue moons often amplify culmination energy. They tend to feel like pressure points in time where emotional, spiritual, situational themes like come to ripen rapidly. And there's often this strange sense of, I don't know, a little bit of acceleration attached to them, as if something has finally reached to the point where it can't remain unresolved any longer. And I feel like that's where we're moving into this acceptance and making, again, the phrase that keeps popping up in my head is that making peace with something. And then we factor in the larger cosmic architecture surrounding this. This full moon is trining Saturn and Neptune in Aries, while opposite Uranus in Gemini. And that combination tells me that I feel like realizations arriving now could have really long-term implications. The Saturn-Neptune combination has been shaping much of the collective atmosphere that we've already been in this year. It's forcing an ongoing reconciliation between vision, reality, spirituality, and practicality, hope, and structure. You know, because Saturn's asking what's sustainable, and Neptune's asking what is meaningful. And together, they ask whether the life you're building has soul inside of it. And with both planets in Aries, questions of identity become even louder now. Who are you becoming after some of the illusions have burned off? What remains after performance, conditioning, inherited expectations begins falling away? What does it look like to move through life from a place of genuine self-responsibility rather than, unconscious adaptation? Then directly across from this full moon sits Uranus in Gemini, bringing this electric disruption, sudden insights, unexpected information into the equation. You know, we've been talking about Uranus for a bit now, and it interrupts patterns, destabilizes certainty, it delivers those revelations that sometimes arrive faster than the mind can comfortably organize. And this is happening in the first decan of Sagittarius, which is ruled by Mercury and Jupiter and associated with the tarot card Eight of Wands. And I really love this symbolism for this full moon because the Eight of Wands carries the feeling of momentum already in motion. The arrows have been released, the message is already traveling, something is unfolding, whether you attempt to control the timeline or not. There's an inevitability to this card, but in the sense that clarity has finally reached a point where it no longer remains in that wishy-washy stage. Like the message is being delivered. And Mercury rulership over this decan, I feel like adds another important layer because this isn't just philosophical Sagittarius wandering through abstract possibilities, although Sagittarius do that fantastically. This is insight becoming like tangible community. This is insight becoming like internal truth, finally finding language type of situation. The realization crystallizing enough that it's not going to be hiding back there in a vague emotional static state. I keep coming back to this phrase of the message is being delivered. And for some people, this may arrive externally through conversations or opportunities or sudden news or invitations or revelations. And for others, I feel like the message may be profoundly internal. It matters where this is happening in your chart to how this is going to land for you. But a recognition of what your exhaustion may be trying to have been, it might be like a recognition of what your exhaustion has been trying to tell you, what your intuition has been circling around for months, where like maybe your nervous system already understands it, even if your mind's been lagging behind type of thing. And I think one of the deepest themes of this full moon revolves around, again, that I feel like I've said this so much in this particular episode, but the message being delivered and you moving into acceptance, right? It's making peace with it. It's not bypassing reality. It's not pretending painful things never happened. It's not forcing positivity where maybe even grief still exists, but recognizing that something that was formed around protection rather than truth, and understanding maybe identities that serve that, or belief systems that serve that, are no longer necessary for the version of you that's trying to emerge. Sagittarius seeks liberation, but real liberation requires honesty and truth. So rather than treating this full moon as an invitation towards, reckless expansion, I would work with it as an invitation towards a more truthful, building a more truthful momentum forward, and a more higher expression of your energy, your focus, and your goals. So when I was thinking about 3 conscious ways to work with this, for regardless of what your sign is, the first is to pay attention to where your energy has become fragmented. Gate 9 especially highlights the consequences of a scattered focus. This is not the time to feed 10 different directions equally simply because they all feel emotionally charged. This is, okay, get real with yourself and figure out where you've been overcommitting or emotionally entangled, or you've been churning in unnecessary mental noise, or the endless consumption of information, doom scrolling, performative BS. Sometimes determination is not about pushing harder. Sometimes it's about becoming more selective. And sometimes it's also about allowing yourself to receive. The second is to examine the beliefs underneath your exhaustion. Sagittarius rules meaning, worldview, philosophy, the stories we tell ourselves about life. And often what drains us most is not necessarily the workload itself, but the belief structure wrapped around it. The belief that you constantly have to prove your worth. The belief that walking away equals failure. The belief that uncertainty is dangerous. The belief that your value only exists through productivity and usefulness and external validation. So this lunation may illuminate where these inherited narratives have been sort of governing your decisions for years. And then the third is to allow clarity to land without immediately demanding the certainty, right? I think that one of the bigger mistakes that we can be having during Sagittarius transits in particular is, okay, we now need to turn this into a 5-year master plan. And that's not how this works. Wisdom rarely arrives fully formed, right? Sometimes the most important shift is simply acknowledging what is true now and sort of allowing that truth to reorganize your next steps much more organically. And the 8 of Wands reminds us that momentum is already unfolding. You don't need to force every answer into existence overnight, okay? But more than anything, I feel like this full moon feels like an emergence after pressure. It's the kind of moment where something internally is probably going to unclench because you're moving into that making peace with something kind of vibes, right? Because the confusion has cleared around it. So that is what I have for you today about this full moon. I appreciate you listening as always. Remember to find beauty every day and seek the magic in the mundane. Thanks for tuning in today. As always, take what resonates, leave the rest. Let whatever landed move through you in whatever way it needs to or wants to. And also, if you want to explore more, you'll find more information in the show notes. If this episode stirred something in you, please share it out. or leave a quick review. It helps so much, and I really appreciate it. And remember, this work is about integration, and it always starts with self-trust.